And so on a daily, is it daily or weekly basis?
Yeah, weekly.
Okay, so on a weekly basis, what they do, or what she does for her job, is she actually interviews and talks with candidates, looks over their resumes. So she has a lot of useful tips for people who are going to be going into that process. But not only that, but just getting the experience and then also the practice. So if you guys are able to, tomorrow, we're going to be doing mock interviews from 10 to 12 and then 1 to 3. Okay, so and then you can actually come in, practice. This is giving you the opportunity to kind of go in for the first time, do that mock interview, and then they give you suggestions and you get to come back and do another one again. So it's really helpful. We had students do it last semester and it actually helped them to get an internship and then I think an employment. So again, it's just making sure that you have the practice, because a lot of times we know that we have to do these different things as far as like resume or going in and doing an interview, but it's another thing to have that practice, okay? So get on there.
Yep, I'm good to go now.
Let's see. Okay. Ron, do you have anything to add on to that?
No, I had a printout somewhere, but I misplaced it, but I'll print another one out so they can sign up for tomorrow's
It's not quite good.
mock interviews.
Okay. Still think it's showing up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not showing up.
No worries about that. You never know, Okay, well, let me start by asking, who do we have today that is here? Need to introduce yourselves?
I'm Naomi, I'm a senior here, and yeah,
Okay, nice to meet you.
nice to meet you.
Cassandra, sorry. I'm Cassandra Thorne. I'm a junior.
Okay, take this over.
My name's Micah. I'm a freshman.
Hey, Micah.
My name is Crystal, and I'm a freshman.
Great. All right, sorry, my eyesight. So I'm going to kind of run through the do's and don'ts of interviewing, and then if you guys want to just let me know if you have questions, specific questions, or if you think of anything along the way, just let me know. The biggest thing about interviewing in a corporate setting is presenting yourself, just presenting yourself very well. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk you through today, to kind of give you a background on what we're looking for and what to do and what not to do, obviously. So some of the do's I have is do ask for the name prior to your interview. Do ask for the name of who will be interviewing you and their title. That way you're not kind of caught off guard by who it is. A lot of times if you're told you're going to be interviewing with the CEO, you can go on the website and read about the CEO of the company and understand a little bit more about them. And then you'll feel more familiar with them, you'll be more comfortable in the interview, and you can even ask them more personal questions that will make them feel close to you and feel like they can build a connection with you. You also can ask what type of interview that you're going to be in that day. So there's what's called a traditional interview, where it's kind of like we're just trying to get to know you. Or they could say, well, this is a situational or behavioral interview. And those types of interviews are going to ask you questions like, tell me about a time when, and you're going to give them a specific example of this situation happening to you, the background of that situation, the actions you took of it in it, and the results that came of it. So if you've never heard of a situational or behavioral interview, I would look it up on the internet to get an idea of what kind of questions you might be asked. And the internet has a lot of examples of questions and how to prepare for an interview like that. And tomorrow when we do mock interviews, we'll be interviewing in that sort of format also. A lot of corporations are usually using situational and behavioral interviewing rather than the traditional interview anymore. Practice interviewing prior to your interview. So again, research some common interview questions on the internet. Have your friends or a family member ask you these interview questions, and interview as if you're interviewing in front of the person. Awesome. Interview as if you're interviewing with the person that you would be in the actual interview setting. It feels kind of silly to be role-playing like that, but I can't tell you how many times that has really saved me. I've asked my husband, ask me some interview questions, and he'll just kind of give them to me while we're on a road trip or something like that. It really helps you prepare, organize your thoughts, and speak in a coherent and clear manner when you're with your actual interviewer. Do dress professionally. So even if they say this is a casual or informal setting, or if you've been to that place before, for example at FedEx, we're a warehouse, so a lot of people come to work in sweats and shorts, that still doesn't mean if you come in for an interview, you still want to dress professionally. So dress above what the normal daily dress code would be. Arrive early, know where you're going and who to ask for. So that goes kind of back to the first one of asking the names of your interviewers. Make sure you know all the information when the person schedules an interview. If they haven't given you the courtesy to tell you exactly where you're going and who to ask for and what room to go in, ask for that information when they schedule the interview. That way when you get there, you have no question about where you're going, and you're less likely to get lost. Same thing if you're going to some side of town that you're not familiar with. Drive the route sometime during the time of day that you would be going to your interview, so that if you know it's going to take you 20 minutes, then maybe you leave 25 minutes early or 30 minutes early so that you're there on time. And I didn't put this on here, but should you show up to an interview late because of circumstances beyond your control, don't make up big excuses, don't give them a big story behind it, just apologize for being late to the interview, and just keep it as simple as possible, because most people don't want to hear a big long excuse about why you were late. Be ready to fill out a job application neatly and accurately. So in some cases you'll be applying prior to getting an interview. In some cases you'll apply at the time that you show up for your interview. A lot of people find this frustrating because they're like, well, all this information is on my resume, why do I need to put it into a job application? And then when you're applying, sometimes they ask you to to fill out a job application and include a resume. If it's asking you for both, always do both. So for example, at FedEx, I have to have a resume for you to be evaluated for a position, but I also expect the application to be filled out because that's a shorter synopsis of each job that you've had. So I don't like it when someone does one or the other. I understand it's more work on the candidate's end, but it's going to make you look better if you follow the directions that they ask you to follow. And then arrive for your interview prepared. So you are allowed to bring notes to an interview. So if you have, for example, in our mock interviews tomorrow, I'm going to tell you guys in a behavioral or situational interview, you want to have notes on the top 3 things you might be proud of from your past or from your past jobs. Something that shows you have accomplishments. You can bring those notes to the interview so that you can refer to them when they start asking you questions. Most interviewers have no problem with that. Bring extra copies of your resume just in case some technical issue happened that your interviewer wasn't able to provide your resume. Again, I realize it's more work on your end, but it's always appreciated on our end if for some reason we weren't able to pull your resume. Any questions so far? Okay, good. Do bring a pen and notepad and take notes. A lot of times if someone asks me a question, I'll kind of jot down the key words from the question so I can be very clear about what they're asking, especially in a situational type interview. A lot of times we're asking, can this person communicate effectively? Can this person work well with others? Can this person take initiative? So sometimes you can jot down the key words from the interview question and figure out what they're really asking you and kind of format your answer from that. Do ask for clarifying questions if you're unsure what the interview is asking. So it's always okay to say, can you repeat that? I didn't quite catch all of that. We would much rather know that you understood what we're asking than you try to answer a question that you are not sure about. Take credit for your achievements. So this is the hardest one for most people. This is not the time to be humble. This is the time to really talk yourself up and talk about what I'm proud of and what I accomplished in the past. And that's why I recommend prepping for an interview with a friend before that, because for a lot of people it's hard for us to talk ourselves up and show off, and it feels like we're being conceited. But in this situation, I'd say you want to be as showy as possible. You want to say, okay, this is what I did and I'm really proud of it and I want to share it with you. Have follow-up questions. So at the end of most interviews, almost every interviewer is going to ask, what questions do you have for me? Unless they really have somehow answered all of your questions about benefits and pay and things like that, you should still have some questions prepared to ask, like, well, how can I affect the company's mission statement? So it's a good idea to, go online, research the company you're applying for, understand what their mission statement is, ask them questions about their mission statement and your role in making sure that the company achieves their goals. Ask them questions about industry trends. At FedEx, we see a lot of extra package volume because of Amazon. That would be a good question to ask, well, how do you plan to address additional package volume because of Amazon adding so many locations or something like that? It just shows that you're very interested about the industry, you're interested about the company. And you only have to have a couple in your back pocket. And if you want, you can also fill out a thank you note. I just always think it's a nice gesture. You don't have to do this, it's not required. That's kind of an old school way of thinking. Sometimes a thank you email is sufficient if we've been emailing you primarily in their communication. And thank you email is fine too. It just shows that you appreciate their time and that you wanted to take the time to write them back and say thank you.
Have you ever done kind of like a FaceTime interview?
Not with FedEx, I haven't, but I have done that with other companies.
Yeah.
I think it's probably becoming more and more common because we rely on technology so much more. I will say most interviewers do prepare to have a face-to-face interview because we can better evaluate your mannerisms, and we want to be able to shake your hand and get to know you, and that's a lot harder with FaceTime, but I mean, more and more companies are relying on technology. And at FedEx, for example, if we interview one person who's long distance and we have to do it, say through FaceTime or Skype, or have to do it on the phone, we actually interview all the candidates the same way. So if I have to call Stephanie for her interview because she's a long distance candidate, then I also have to call all the other candidates so that we have the same, no one's got a leg up on the other person because they got to do it in person. So that's a good question. Okay, so don't. A big one, a lot of people do this by accident. Don't use too much perfume or cologne. You get really nervous and you're like, I'm sweating, I gotta spray some more perfume on. I did that once. I know I probably went into the interview just reeking because it was really hot and I was really nervous, and I kept spraying body spray on. Don't do that because your interviewer will notice that. Don't eat, drink, or chew gum during the interview unless you're offered like a bottle of water. Don't eat, drink, or chew gum. Do not use slang terminology during your interview. So as much as possible, keep a professional conversational tone. Use proper grammar. You're not going to be thought of poorly if you speak in a personal way, but you want to avoid using slang. Don't let your cell phone interrupt the interview. Just turn it off. Like, don't even have it on silent because it can be distracting if you see it light up, or if it's on vibrate and you hear it buzzing. Just completely turn it off. Most interviews are no more than an hour. I think you can go without your cell phone for an hour, right? Don't slouch or fidget, so sit up straight. I didn't put this on here, but it should kind of go under the do's. Do be sure to make eye contact. So it's really hard to keep your hands from feeling busy. That's what you got your pen and your notepad for. It's okay to keep your hands busy with your pen and your notepad, but you want to sit up straight and try to have your hands still. Don't assume you have the job just because you were interviewed. So, but the job market's highly competitive, and yes, there are a lot more jobs out there right now than there have been in a while, but don't assume just because you had an interview that you're going to get the job. And don't get discouraged if you don't get that job. Some people interview 10, 20 times before they find the perfect job. I think when I interviewed for FedEx, it was my 13th interview. You can't let it get you down. You have to take every opportunity, every time that you are turned down as an opportunity to improve the next time you go to the next interview. And every time you interview in a professional setting, that is great interview practice for you. Don't act desperate. You guys are all highly marketable. You're already in school. Most companies will be lucky to have you as part of their team. So you don't have to act desperate. You don't have to call the recruiter back constantly asking about the status of your interview. One follow-up is appropriate. Multiple follow-ups are not appropriate. And then on the flip side of that, don't act disengaged. So we still want to know that you want to work for us. So again, acting like this is the company you want to work for, and I've done the research and I think this is a great place to work, will go a long way, rather than you walking in like, well, this is my third interview of the day. What do you have for me? I think. Okay, in the interview process, when you're answering questions, don't use words like we or would have or if. You want to give specific historical examples of your accomplishments. So the more specific you are about what you did in these situations, the better you're going to make yourself look. A lot of us have a team-oriented attitude, which is awesome. And I know when me and Stephanie are working together, I think of us as a team, so it's really hard for me in an interview setting to say, I did this and I did this, because a lot of times I didn't just do it, Stephanie and I did it, we did it as a team. But in an interview setting, you want to talk about what you did. So even if you are in a team setting, you want to speak in terms of what I did, And if it was a team effort, you want to specifically tell your interviewer what your role was in that project or the example that you're giving. Don't speak in terms of like, well, if I was in that situation, I would have done this, because that doesn't tell me what you did, it tells me what you would do. So we, again, want specific examples of something you actually accomplished in the past. Don't speak negatively about previous employers. Again, this is another one that's kind of easy to do, but really we don't want to hear about how bad you had it at Walmart or wherever your previous employer was. We want to hear about how good you want to have it at FedEx. So if you have something, if you're asked why you left a previous employer, put a positive spin on it. Well, there wasn't really enough room for me to grow there, so I'm looking for another job at a company where there's more opportunity to grow. Don't speak negatively about yourself. Most people don't have a problem with this in an interview setting, but sometimes it's easy to do humorously or when you're nervous. So just always speak in a positive light about yourself. Don't discuss personal issues or family problems. So this isn't the time to bring up that your grandmother died or that your dog passed away or anything like that. Leave it out unless you're asked specifically, and most times you're not going to be asked specifically about your personal life. Definitely leave family problems out of it. And then don't lie. So it's easy to say, well, I'm just going to make everything up and make myself look really good. Don't do that, because you're not going to have yourself convinced and you're not going to have your interviewer convinced. We're usually able to spot that pretty quickly. Definitely go with what is the most truthful answer to the interview question. What do you think, guys? Do you have any specific questions about the interview process? Interviewing in a corporate setting? Okay, well, Stephanie and I put together a quick skit if you want to do it.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
so this is kind of our do's and don'ts of
Give me a
interviewing.
second.
So
Costume change. I wasn't sure if we were going to still do it. I'm happy.
I figure we might as well.
It's always.
So we're going to show you what to do and what not to do. And I'm going to be an interviewer, and Stephanie's going to be a prospective employee.
This is actually my favorite part, because you get to watch how it works and then just put yourself in that situation. But again, it's just all a matter of making this fun, because you don't want to be going into an interview nervous or scared. So again, just look at it as this, we're going to practice being able to do this, and then you're going to become an expert, interviewee.
All right. So we're going to say Stephanie's interview was at 12:15. You're on the spot. She might have run out to try to get something actually.
Should leave.
So number one rule, show up for your interview, right? Right. I think so. She had a wardrobe change.
Do you guys have any questions before they do the little skit?
It's okay.
Anything interesting that you guys heard today about interviewing?
Oh, there she is.
She's here.
Oh,
Hi, Miss Hayes.
oh, hey, I'm sorry.
I'm
Just
Annie
kidding.
Hamel.
Oh, yeah, let me get my sunglasses up on
Okay.
the top of my head there.
Please have a seat.
Oh, yeah, well, I was gonna leave earlier and then I thought it doesn't matter if I'm late a little bit, it's okay.
You like my shoes?
I do. Those are nifty shoes.
Hi. Okay.
So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a fashionista, obviously, and so that's one of the greatest things about, having a job. So if I can, I'm hoping I get this job, which I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get it because it'll support my habits of buying and stuff like that. But can you hold on just a second? That's funny. Yeah, I know, but I'm in it. I'm in an interview, so I'm gonna that okay? Are you sure? Okay, well, okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
tell me, why do you think you would be a good fit for this manager position?
Well, you know, I mean, after high school, I took a couple of classes, but my dad is a manager, and I've seen him, I've listened to some of the stuff that he's done, and listened to how he handled other people, and, yeah, I think I can do it. My dad can do it, I can do it. So I'm pretty good at that.
Good, okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Stephanie. I really appreciate you coming.
Oh, okay, well, I really like your hair. I didn't get a chance to show you a picture of my puppy.
Oh, okay.
You want? She's
Sure,
so cute.
sure.
Isn't
Oh,
she
yes,
cute?
she is. So adorable.
I know,
How
she is.
nice.
Okay. Well, don't forget. All right, so I really need this job.
Okay, we'll give you a call.
All right,
Thank you,
thanks.
Stephanie. So that first one obviously was the don'ts in interviewing. And Stephanie's going to come back for the do's, and we'll kind of talk about what you guys notice the differences were.
Pretty sure I brought a jacket and must have dropped it off on the answer. There it is.
Hello, Ms. Hayes. My name's Anna Hamill. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Miss Hamill. Nice to meet you too.
Thank you for being on time for your 12:30 interview today.
Hey, thank you for having me. I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Good. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was able to go out and I completed my bachelor's degree and 2 masters. One master's is in human resources management, and the second one is in my MBA, so my master's in business association. So, I, whenever I come in and do this the second time, I always like to change my momentum. And my phone obviously became a problem. And I meant to leave that behind, guys. Sorry. I had my master's, and I know this position is working with operations closely, so between the two, that'll give me an opportunity to bring the 2 skills of human resources and my MBA together for resources.
Very good. And why do you think it'd be a good fit for this manager position?
Well, I have been working on stretch projects within the company. I've been shadowing different managers, learning some of their techniques and ideas. I did take on a new project that we were able to adapt as the company policy, as a new company policy, working closely with upper management and operations to prepare for this new policy. And so in that interim, I think I learned a lot on getting into management, working closely with the management team.
Good. All right, thank you.
All right.
Okay, so what were the major differences you saw between the first interview and the second interview?
Dress change.
Anybody else?
She was on time.
She was on time for her interview, yep. What about in her interview answers?
One was more professional than the other.
So one talks strictly about her professional career and her education. The other one, she really only talked about her personal life, right? Anything else you guys noticed? Obviously more professional attire, more professional presentation. With Ms. assuming the phone didn't go
Yeah,
off the
I
second
did.
time.
I haven't to grab that. I left my earbud behind and grabbed my phone.
Didn't answer her phone during the interview. Anything else? I think that was most of it.
Sorry about that, guys.
So we didn't have a chance to rehearse before today, so.
On the way here, she goes, I'm gonna ask you these 2 questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has anyone ever lined up an interview with like a bigger corporation, something like that?
Just in the education setting, my sister, she's now working for the government down in Oklahoma for Riverside boarding school. So I was there when she did her phone interview, but the questions they asked her were pretty like simple, but all the information she gave them was pretty good, like just about her education and like what she's done with children, and now she works in now she's like a dorm staff too, so like her and my mom work over there, and like the questions that they were asked, it was just kind of to the point, what they would do if they did get the job. So yeah.
So that would be what I would call a traditional interview style where, they would ask, okay, if I was put in this situation, what would you do? In that case, it is okay to use, I would do this if I was in that situation. So that is kind of one of the differences between the traditional interview style and the situational or behavioral interview style. So that's why I say you want to identify ahead of time what they're looking for. I went into an interview setting with a much smaller company, and I was used to these corporate interviews where they ask situational behavior questions where they're looking for what did you do and give me the background and the actions you took and the results. And it ended up being a traditional interview, and so I kept trying to form my answers in this background action result kind of way, and the interviewer kind of stopped me and was like, no, I want to know more about the real you and what would you do in this situation. And it was kind of awkward because I was like, well, I'm not used to interviewing like that, so I don't know how to answer that. So it's definitely helpful to know ahead of time if they're willing to give you that information, what kind of interview it is. So that's good to know.
One of the best pieces of advice I received from my uncle one time was practice your answers out loud. Like when you're driving down the road, just say them out loud, because you know what you want to say in your mind, but getting it from here to here, you're not always able to complete a full thought or to get the sentence out correctly like you thought it was going to sound great in your head, and just to get it out and practice them out loud.
That is a really great call out. I mean, I was telling you guys to find a friend and have them ask you interview questions, but yeah, talking to yourself works just as well too, or I've done it like in the shower getting ready for work. I asked Stephanie, tell me a little bit about yourself. They're probably going to ask you that as soon as you walk in. You want to have something prepared ahead of time about yourself that's not, well, I'm a fashionista and I need to get a job to fund my fashionista habit. What we really want to know is, where have you come from? What kind of education did you complete? Did you enjoy school? What kind of experience do you have? We want a general 60-second overview of all about you. So practice that in the mirror so you can hear yourself saying it out loud, and so that you can be organized in your thoughts, because you kind of want to start with, well, I went to school at Haskell Indian Nations University, and then I graduated from KU with a business administration, bachelor's in business administration, and I've been working at FedEx ever since, and I'd really like to get into this industry because that way it seems like you're prepared for one thing. We get all the information about you that we want to know, and you've left all the personal stuff out of it. You don't accidentally slip in personal things. So yeah, that's really cool.
I always feel like knowing their mission or vision statement helps a lot. Even if it's just a simple, we believe in being a responsible community partner, and somebody that's going in with your environmental studies course or something like that, and they get into an organization that has that in their mission statement, you can go in and say, and with my degree in environmental studies, I fit well with the company mission of being a good corporate partner, community partner, and take my skills and adapt them to your company and bring value to your company with that.
Yeah. I always also say finding a job is a full-time job in itself, because you do want to do that research on these companies. If you can do the research on the person that's interviewing you, that's awesome. If you can't do the research on the company, like she said, You can tell very quickly from a company's general website, is it a fast-paced environment I'm gonna be in? Or are they more focused on customer service, or are they more focused on environmental concerns? You can tell very quickly and kind of introduce yourself in a way that's more friendly to what their culture is.
I'm not sure if Anna's come across this before, but sometimes people will ask you a question like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I had a mentor once that during my internship, he addressed that question also. Now this would work in most situations. You'll just have to fill out the interview for sure. But if it's a very friendly interview and you seem to be making a connection in the interview, then he said, if they ask you that question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Sometimes you may say, I see myself in your position in 5 years, and I'd like to grow in the company and have a position either equal or become your peer or something like that. If you have a manager or a company that doesn't want to promote you, that may be an aggressive move on their part, and they may be threatened by your answer. And so a manager that's threatened by your answer may eliminate you, but then that's a good thing because now you're not going into a company that's not going to help you progress. If I were to say the same thing to Anna, she should be comfortable with me saying that, because in all reality, she should be planning her next move, which will be going up, or looking forward to having me or grooming me into a peer or partner. So you want to be able to answer that question with confidence that you're going to be looking at ways to promote. If you don't feel like the interview, if it's a very stoic interview, you don't feel that you have that connection, you may just want to say all the different things that you're looking at to advance yourself. So I'm looking at taking some advanced degree courses, or I'm looking at I would love to shadow a manager and get into your management staff, something like that. So just be prepared to answer that question. I always think that's a little bit startling to answer sometimes.
Yeah, that's a good one. I hadn't really thought of at all, and I have been asked that before. And probably not had the best answer. So, and if you're in a corporate setting, they probably are looking for someone who wants to move up with the company, because corporations like to advance people's careers. Like Stephanie said, I should be interviewing for my replacement so that I can promote one day. Sometimes those smaller organizations or a mom and pop business might not be looking for someone that's looking to advance. They want to know that someone's going to be with them long term in the same position. So kind of feel out your answer by judging what their culture is looking for. So one of the worst interview answers I got, and I can't remember what question I asked them, but they were like, well, I'm a workhorse and I'm just going to work really hard, and you don't have to worry about me trying to do anything extra and trying to go do something else. I'm just a workhorse. I just put my head down and work. And I was like, that's not really what I'm working for. I'm sure that in some jobs that would be perfect, but in the job I was interviewing for, I wanted someone that's going to move up and move on with the company. So it's kind of hard to feel that stuff out, but again, if you do that research on the company before you go in, you can get a good idea of what they're looking for.
And there's nothing wrong with seeking somebody out that's in a position very similar to what you're looking for, and just ask them to help you with what they think would be good interview questions or answers, or helping you form your answers before an interview. I mean, reaching out to a mentor or just, a good friend in that type of position. Maybe your parents know somebody that's in a position, or maybe Yosh knows somebody that's in a job that works for, like she said, like for a government education setting, to be able to sit. Do you know anybody in that? To that type of a setting or environment, and she can connect you. So there's always networking is always a good thing. So use your network.
Well, we didn't take up the full time.
So
I have a
Anna's
question.
gonna start a chat.
So like when a person is researching a position at a company, and is is it a good thing or a bad thing if you research the people that you think will be interviewing you and then to refer to them on a first name basis?
I think it's a good thing to research them. I mean, you don't want to stalk them on Facebook or anything, but research their bio on the company website so you have an idea of what their background is. I would say introduce yourself and refer to them the first time by their, Mr. whatever, the first time, and then if they introduce themselves as, no, you can call me Ron, then you can go on a first name basis from there. I would always start with the formal, and if the setting, if they kind of guide you towards more informal, you can follow their lead on that. That's a really good question. Yeah, and you can say, hey, I read online, I saw that you finished your degree at Kansas, or University of Kansas. I grew up in Lawrence. So anything you can find in common with them to make them feel more at ease with you or make them feel like they have the connection with you is fine.
To follow up on, they sent in a thank you note for taking time and giving you the opportunity to interview. Again, state your note. It's so easy to find those notes on Google. Just go to Google, find a good one, mix a couple of them up, make it fit for you. Sometimes what you can do to add into the note is, well, we picked a beautiful day to interview, something that ties that day together, something that you saw. You had mentioned that you were looking for, blah, blah, blah. So you got to bring up something that connects with that interview. Like you had mentioned that you were looking for somebody that may be blah, blah, blah. I didn't get a chance to mention this, but mostly just say thank you for the opportunity. But those notes, sometimes they run your name back across their desk. And so they have like 10 people or 15 or 20 people that they've interviewed, and they're trying to remember everybody and everything that they interviewed for. But if you can find that connection, like, oh, I'm the student that you talked to that told you that I grew up in Lawrence. It's good to know that you're a KU graduate, and but I'd like to just follow up and tell